You're listening to In Bad Company with Heath Ball. Today we are interviewing Kyle Ascione, business owner, podcaster. If you want to know about Asphalt, this is your guy. This is a fun interview where we talk about different seasons, starting a new business, family, faith, and maybe even some alien talk. Come check it out. So you're a business owner. Why don't you tell us about your business, how it started, and how that first kind of started off?
Well, it started, truthfully, I guess, what do you do first? What do I do?
Yeah.
So I solve problems. Problems that I just so happen to solve are excavation, asphalt, paving, concrete, in the more so like the construction infrastructure side of things. Residential and commercial, not necessarily roadways and whatnot, but how I got into it, I wasn't planning on it. Truthfully, I went to school for something else. Uh, Paraphrase and skip ahead a few years. I was in between jobs and moved back home after dad died. Took whatever job I get. In between jobs, got offered a position at this asphalt company. Liked the industry, decided to go off on my own, knowing that as I was growing up at one point in time, I would eventually work for myself. Uh, but didn't know exactly when. So, you know, at the mall, you put the coin in the big funnel and it goes around and around and around until it drops in the middle. That's kind of what I thought my entrepreneur life would be like. Like I wasn't going to slide right into it. I was just working my way around and eventually I would get there. Well, eventually it has to turn into 2 day at some point in time. And so I kind of made a promise to myself and said, all right, the next person I work for will be the last person I work for. I'm just going for it after that, no matter what it is. And so this asphalt company that I worked for just so happened to be the next and the last. And then now I'm here 6.5 years later.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that funnel analogy. At first, I thought you were saying your business was making those funnels.
Oh, no.
I'm like, I always wondered where those came from. We make giant funnels. Shout out to Big Funnel out there.
Big Funnel Coin Company. Big Coin Funnel Company.
Do you think they eat funnel cakes at the funnel company?
I think probably falafels.
Falafels?
Yeah.
A falafel fun funnel company sounds like a fun place to work. But I love that analogy of that. I mean, that's the description of most people with their jobs, right? Is hopefully you don't just take the first thing that you apply for, is that you're slowly searching for the best place for you.
Yeah.
You know, you talk even in construction, it's like, well, what do you want to do? What's your area? And, you know, I think I'm wholeheartedly on board with if you don't have a specialty, like no one does everything well.
Right.
Like there's like, oh yeah, you can do multiple things, but you should really focus on something that you're really good at. And that should be the majority of your time. But I like that idea of like searching for a job or a career is slowly honing in on something closer.
I knew that eventually, you know, the drop in the middle of the funnel would be me starting a business. But it was more so like either I wasn't ready for it, I was scared to do it. I knew it would happen one day. I just didn't know when. And I was basically going to waste time until the one day happened and enjoy where I was at. Well, okay, yes, figuring out what it is part of the equation. But I would have been further ahead as a business owner if I would have just started something sooner than later. Like if you really want to own a business, and if I had to talk to me before, right, younger me, I would tell that person, just start something right now. Like decide that you're going to do it now because it's going to take X amount of time and X amount of years to learn the stuff that you need to learn in order to get good at anything that you do. Well, the later you start, the longer it prolongs to get to that point of being even decent at anything.
Yeah.
So the sooner you start, the sooner you'll learn. The other aspect of that is if you start at something that you don't really love, then you could be locked into something that you're not passionate about.
Mm.
And I think kind of a big conversation, a big topic, but if you go back to, do I think that my life played out just the way it was supposed to? Absolutely. But it also teaches me and has taught me how to train the next generation or my kids if I were to have to do me all over again.
Mm.
And I would start back with my parents. And because I wish somebody would have told me, like, when you're figuring out what it is that you want to do, because most people don't even have that conversation. It's just get a job. The conversation of do you even enjoy it is void.
Yeah.
Just non-existent. So at a young age, when a kid starts to express interest in anything, I think at that point in time, and they're able to comprehend that I like this over that, that is when you should start planting the seeds of pay attention to what you like and what you find interesting, because one day you might be able to get paid to do that.
Mm.
And so it will open up a kid's mind to not what he's familiar with, but what he's interested in. And I think that, had I been introduced to those types of thinking before, I would have still came to the same place I am now. I would have just gotten here a whole lot sooner. And if, and would have had a lot more experience walking into it versus basically no experience at 26.
Yeah.
Or 28, you know what I mean? 26 is when I started this industry. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's probably only, it sounds heavy to say, but one of the only regrets in my life is that I hadn't started my business earlier.
Yeah.
Because I think there is fear in that, but it's like, there's so much more opportunity when you're starting your own business. And even if you fall flat on your face, you still have time when you're younger to fail.
Right.
It's like, especially before having a family and kids, like, you're definitely more locked into what you can and cannot do. But I mean, I just looked at the earning potential of my hourly job compared to starting my own business.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I could work, even if one of my fears was getting enough business to supply my year on my own.
Right.
And I looked at it and I was like, I will make so much more money working for myself
Mm-hmm.
that I can afford to not fill my year and still come out what I'm making right now.
Sure.
And so it's like, it took a bit of the fear away, because I'm like, well, I'm not making that much right now. If I just jump right into my business and I only fill half my year, I'll come out pretty similar to what I started,
Right.
So I think that's a lot of that too, is like, don't be afraid, and it's also you can do it in a safe way too. Like, you can start your business out of your garage, or you can start it. You don't have to quit your day job and jump into your business.
Right. You can moonlight something, and you can work overtime and more time in order to get something else happening so that you can make a better transition. And that's where, what we're talking about is going to apply mainly to people that have a certain amount of ambition and are willing to put in the extra work, or at least start planning stuff and have the planning more than just an idea, and you can do it both ways. You can, like you were just saying, kind of moonlight the stuff. Where I see most people stopping with that idea is, well, it will require more work. Well, yeah, yes, it would. So unless once that realization has been exposed, it now cancels off all of the other conversations for, I want more, but I'm not willing to work for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just want it easy and I want all of this stuff. Well, if you want it, then go get it. If you're not willing to go get it, then you don't really want it.
Mm-hmm. I do struggle too, because I know a lot of people who start their own business or want to start their own business, because they don't want to work for somebody.
Yeah.
And I get that freedom and that desire for freedom, but I also feel like I'm not trying to discourage people from starting their own business, but there is safety and comfort in having someone else lead.
Oh, yes.
And I think if you are just wanting to start a business because you don't want to work for anymore because they don't get you,
Right.
I think it's more of a self problem.
Right.
Then unless you're like, I feel like the best place to start a business is I have a passion for this, and for me, doing construction was never like, I enjoy it. It's never like I love painting walls or I love flooring.
Yeah.
I think for me, I love having a flexible schedule. I love being able to support my family. Like that's kind of my catalyst.
Yeah.
And my business has allowed me to do that.
Right.
Right. But so
it definitely comes with, before you move on, it definitely comes with different challenges that you wouldn't experience otherwise, because the responsibility falls on you. There's more opportunity, but there's also more responsibility, because if you don't get up and do what you need to do for the day, then you lose.
Yeah.
When you work for somebody else, you're expecting them to do all of the work that they need to do so you can show up and not have to worry. There's comfort in that. And, I get why people don't want to start. And yeah, you're exactly right. If you're just a disgruntled person in general, you think that you can do it better than everybody else, most likely you're going to get a rude awakening. The other thing is, a lot of people start their own business because they've never enjoyed and it's somebody that they've worked for.
yeah.
And I think that's probably 75% of the people that start businesses. Why they stop is because they got into it because they either haven't found a good person to work for, or they're not a good person to work with themselves.
Yeah.
And it takes a little bit of humbling. I mean, more businesses close after they open than what stay open.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big reason why.
Yeah. It's hard because it stops with you. You're the one that answers the questions. You're the one that figures it out. And especially as your business grows, then you have people coming to you for the answer.
Right.
And I think there's that added pressure. But then I also feel like it feels isolating because you have to fix it.
Yep.
But I would also say that's why it's so cool to be a part of groups or having mentors of other people in the industry that you can talk to. Like you're not as alone as you think. If you surround yourself with good people, or like, what's that group you're a part of?
TCS?
Yeah.
Yep.
Why don't you give them a shout out and what they do?
Contractor school. So,
You want to try that without Skittles?
oh yeah, sorry, I got Skittles in my mouth. Mid podcast, never said I was any good company. So, yeah, so Top Contractor School is a network for contractors. You need friends, you need people to disciple and people to be discipled by. I mean, even, us, like we talk about stuff, and in that conversation comes solutions, maybe to even problems we didn't know we were dealing with, but just answers to the next thing, and it connects dots. Well, unless that opportunity is created by getting in an environment that breeds results, just because that's the nature of the environment, you're never going to experience that. You also have to, it's also needed because I look at it this way, is that as a business owner, you're on your own island, right? Well, if everybody's on their own island, then you're all on your own island together. Makes sense? Like nobody's going to come save you. You have to save yourself. But if I have somebody that understands me and I understand them, then I don't feel so alone anymore. Like I can be comfortable with my island. I start to like it. I start to build on it. I start to feel comfortable on it. I start to wave at the other islands. You know what I mean? All that good stuff.
Yeah.
But that's where a community of people that matter or that care matters.
Yeah. So was there a moment that you made a decision, or do you remember the moment that you chose to start your business? Do you remember that?
Yes, I realized that it was better off for me to not continue where I was at. Um, and I thought, well, took me a couple months to figure out that that it's all turning real now. And honestly, I had to ask myself, am I going to be honest? Am I going to keep the promise to myself, or am I going to not? Am I going to go find another job? And even though, because look, the hard part about that is I was the only person accountable to me.
Mhm.
That's it. I didn't tell anybody else what was going on. I didn't do that. So it's like, all right, you're either going to be a liar to yourself or you're not. And if you're going to do it now, what's that going to say for the next time? What precedent are you setting for yourself? So I did have this back and forth. And combined with, well, you're never going to be younger than you are right now, not married, don't have any kids. What's the worst that can happen? You go right back to where you're at.
Yeah.
You do the same thing that you're doing now, or you fail and you have to start over. Like, honestly, I was 28 when I was having these conversations in my head, and you're now at 35. Like, even if I had to start over or start for the first time now, it would still be like, you can still recover. You can always recover. You can always start over. You can always, it's never too late. And so, yeah, I do remember I remember the time period. It wasn't exactly a day. Couldn't give you the date, but I went out and bought a truck that I needed to do the work that I was getting ready to do, and I needed to buy that truck while I still had proof of income. So I went and bought the truck. I had a mortgage and a new $30,000 truck loan, and then I quit my job. And I had about $3,000 in the bank, and I said, "Well, sink or swim now. There's no going back." Yeah. At least you can go back to what you were already doing. So, yeah, that's how it started.
That's cool. And so you started it 5 years ago, you said?
2018.
2018.
So this will be 7 years this year.
That's cool. And now how many employees do you have?
Oh, right now there's about 10. We
This is
go
your slow
anywhere
season?
yeah, this is our slow season. We go anywhere from 8 to 12 in any given year. I mean, the goal right now, so like we're at beginning of every year, we during our slow season is when we plan, literally sit down. And this is where people don't really understand what that means. And I'm speaking to more so like the new business owners, because it's like, okay, well, I hear people talk about planning for the next year and figuring all this stuff out, but I'm so used to doing, I don't know what the planning is or what it looks like or how to do that because I've never experienced or been involved in it before. It is literally as simple as it's said. You sit down, get yourself a whiteboard, get you even just a piece of paper and write down goals. Whatever year it is, goals at the top. And whether it's you or somebody else, just pick a number. All right. 3. Start with 3. You might have some goals that you already have in your mind and you can jot down 10. It doesn't matter. But you have to have something for this year that you're going to try to accomplish. And once you get that stuff down there, once you put it on paper, it becomes real, right? It's like, okay, now I've confirmed it. And then you look at it and you say, all right, well, maybe like some of these are too small. Maybe some of these are too big. Maybe some of these aren't really obtainable in a year. And you start to narrow down into what does make sense without shortchanging yourself, right? Because there's a theory, if you shoot for the moon, you'll never leave Earth. If you shoot for Mars, you'll land on the moon.
Yes, which I was going to bring this up. I find it really interesting because it's the idea of make your goals bigger than you think you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you make them too ridiculous, which I've seen that recently, where it's, I started a new business, I want to make $10 million this year. And it's like, you make birdhouses. I don't know if that's an attainable goal, you know?
Well, okay. But
And I'm not trying to make fun of your birdhouse business.
no, but okay. So where this becomes real is it's like, okay, I take everything very seriously, right? I've got a good sense of humor, but I take a lot of things very seriously. And some people don't like that about me. I'm almost too literal. But you want to bring it up like a joke. Okay. Just, this hypothetical person. I want to make $10 million this year. Well, I'm going to sell birdhouses. Okay, great. How do we market to how much are you going to sell your birdhouses for? Well, $10 a piece. All right. So then how many do we need to sell? Well, we need to sell, I don't know, 100,000. Okay. Or we need to sell 1 million. All right. So we need to figure out how to market to 2 million people at a 50% sale rate of $10 a piece. Now you just made $10 million a year.
And you sold birdhouses.
And you sold birdhouses. So it's not necessarily even like, is it possible or not? Is your plan able to obtain that?
Yeah.
If you cannot get your product to 2 million people at $10 a piece to get 1 million sold, then you have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to do it. It might take a couple years to get there. It might not. Luckily, we've got things like the internet, which makes things like that very easy. So it might seem weird at first, but you would have never known that or really thought through that had you not sat down and wrote it down first.
So you almost go off it. And this makes so much sense that you would say it's not about don't throw out a ridiculous number, but you need to have the formula and plan for that big number.
Right.
And then I would say add on to that too. If it's a ridiculous number, it's really based on how many birdhouses you'd have to sell.
Correct.
Can you physically make that many? Can you make 1 million birdhouses
Correct.
this year? That's because if you can't make 1 million birdhouses,
right,
then that is a ridiculous number,
Or then you look into manufacturing.
Yeah.
Like all it is an answer for your problem.
Okay. So
you reverse engineer yourself from what you want, where you're at.
Yeah.
Can you do it? Does it make sense? And then you go back to where you're at. And now you know the next step forward because you went to the end game. You brought steps back to where you are now. And now you know the first step to take forward again. So, in this planning and stuff like that, it's quite literally that. It's sit down. If you have more than one person, more than yourself to do it with, then you're extremely lucky. And you brainstorm. You brainstorm how you're going to do it, and you put it on paper, and you stick it up on a wall or somewhere where you're going to see every single day. So everybody that is inside your business understands what the objective is for this year. And you do that with your business goals, with your personnel, like attitude, with, how we want this business to feel and function, here's a big one. What we did this year is what's going to kill us. And we got, so I was in Florida for 2 months, came back, we sat down, we put in about 60 hours, 50 hours, sitting down around a table talking about this stuff. Me and 4 other people. And we brainstormed and we were like, all right, we're going to talk about this topic today. And we spent 4 hours on one topic. And at the end of that 4 hours, sometimes it ran 5, sometimes it ran 6, but we had better direction. And one of them was what's going to kill us. And we identified all of the problems inside our business that either waste time, isn't efficient, going back, like all of the things that doesn't make us or put us where we want to be. And it's stuff like that is extremely important.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't have a plan, correct, how can you get to that? I love how you took my joke of birdhouses, and it's like, now I'm like, I think we're starting a bird business. I think we're doing this.
Well, it snaps people into reality of, no, you actually can. Like it's what you think is unobtainable is actually more obtainable than you think, as long as you make a plan.
I guess that's what made me, I don't want to name names, but that's what I saw in an organization that was shooting so high. I thought it was ridiculous. And I think looking back, it's like, because there was no plan
Correct.
in place. It was like, this is what we want to hit. And I'm like, that's laughable.
Right.
Because, and maybe they had a plan, but I did not see it.
Right.
And it's like, you can't just put on big numbers to make.
So whose fault is that if, on two things, if they didn't have a plan and you didn't see it, whose fault is that?
Yeah.
Leadership.
Yeah.
That falls on leadership, because it would have changed your mind if we said, this is what we want to do and this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Then you've been, all right, I can get on board with that. Like, where do I find myself inside that plan? If you don't tell me, because I can see it's possible, I'm going to find a way for me to be there. Or you're going to tell me where I need to be in order to contribute to that plan.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Let's go.
Yeah. I like that idea too, that you have to implement and show it. And you brought this up too, but you're very big on sharing that with your employees. I feel like you've talked about how, your employees are producers.
Yeah.
And you share with them what you're producing, what your goal is.
Yep.
Because I think it's so easy to be a hourly worker, and I'm like, I'm just checking off my box.
Right.
But then you explain, well, I guess, you say in your words, but yeah, how do you get them involved in that end goal when they're just an hourly worker?
Well, I'll say the number one first thing, I'm going to say this, but we're not going to land on it because it's almost a topic for a whole nother episode, is core values. Is, for one, you have to have core values inside your business. And so you automatically hire people that fit within those core values. So there's step number one. Step number two, you have to give everybody the direction that you're going, because otherwise they're just like, well, I'm just along for the ride and I don't know where the ride's going. Like, I don't even know if I want to be on this ride. So it gives them a picture. It gives them value because they feel like they're part of something bigger rather than I'm just here to punch a clock. We all know what we're working towards, but if you can tie your goal for your business, here's where I think a lot of the connections made is, all right, just because the owner has a goal for him and his business, what does that mean for me? Like, why am I going to show up and work towards something for there? So you have to bring it back to the person. And that starts at the hiring phase. When you ask somebody, what are your goals? We literally have people fill out a form. Part of it is how I want to be coached, like the best way that I can communicate with you, and things that people are vulnerable to put on paper. They're not vulnerable to speak. What are your triggers? What makes you motivated? All these things. What are your goals for the next year? And so it's written on paper. So now it becomes alive for them, and they're not even realizing it before they even start. You get that information of how to communicate with this person on paper, and you have the verbal, the verbal, like, what are your goals? Speak it into existence on what it is that you want, and stop being afraid that your goals are too big, because I'm going to try and help you get there. And I'm going to show you that, look, if you actually want that, there's an avenue that you can get that right where you're at. Like, we can all work for this. This is not about a me elevation. This is a we elevation. And so sharing all of the numbers, the good, the bad, everything. I think people are too afraid to share the numbers of their business. Now, there's some that are really only interpreted and understood by specific people that see the numbers coming and going every day. So it can get misinterpreted and misunderstood if you don't have the fullest understanding. But what I do share is how much we made, or how much the company brought in, how much, like, how healthy we are for the quarter. Because, if we say, all right, we want to make $1 million this year, well, we're at a quarter, and we're, if I say we're at 250 million after the first quarter, everybody's gonna be like, sweet, we're right on par. We're right on par. Keep up the pace that we're doing. If you say, well, we're 350,000, then you almost move your goal further ahead, because if you don't, can we do more? Let's bump it up a little bit. We did more than we thought. If you don't do that, people are going to think, well, we don't have to work as hard, and they check their foot off the gas. That's how you get behind. If you're behind, you say, well, I need $1.25. Then it's like, all right, we all need to pick up the pace because this benefits all of us. Right. So you have these conversations and it's valuable because that's where you get the buy-in at. And they feel a part of something bigger. I also share numbers of these are our expenses.
Yeah.
Like I actually share more expense numbers than I do incoming numbers. Now you got to be careful because it can be very downturning because if somebody always has a negative, like, oh, it's just costs so much money because you're afraid of them knowing what is made, like you're putting negative thoughts into the mind of your employees and they're going to operate in a negative way beyond that. Like there's really no hope if all that you share is, oh, this just cost me 10 grand. Well, sweet. What else am I going to do that's going to cost you 10 grand? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't give us any sort of positive motivation to come from. But if I know that, hey, we're going to make 30 grand on this job, like that's how this works. And they start to understand the cycle, right?
It's kind of like you're having them be goal oriented,
100%.
job oriented, not just I'm working 8 hours. Like,
Yes.
we all have a goal we're going for, and that's how the business is thriving
Yes.
and healthy.
Yeah. The hard part is you and me as business owners, we're going to naturally be goal oriented because we can't not be goal oriented in order to get into this.
Yeah.
So that's just something that we automatically bring to the table. Everybody else, they're not. Most people aren't goal oriented. So you have to find a way to plant that inside them, almost without them knowing.
I like that. I think it's getting people on board with you.
Yes.
Getting that goal orientation. And I think you'd say this too, but just like hiring good people, it's so key.
Oh, yeah. It is.
I had a builder in our Traverse City area, Scott Norris, who told me something that's always stuck with me is like, when we were talking about employees, and it's like, you can teach skill, but you can't teach attitude.
Ooh.
And it's like, man, like his viewpoint, which I agree with, was I would much rather have someone who's a hard worker, who's motivated, who wants to learn, than the most skilled person that's dragging their feet, doesn't want to do anything if it's not the right way.
Yeah.
You just need that motivation. Now, skill has to come as well. Like,
Yeah.
you have some people that are great people and they just can't do the job.
Right. Like I super like you as a person, but dude, like this just ain't working out. Like,
Yeah.
this is a job, not a daycare.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that 100%. And it's funny you say that because that thought popped into my mind a few years ago and I don't know where it came from. It just kind of dawned on me one day and I said, just came to the realization, like I can teach the skill, but I can't teach the character.
Yeah.
And so it's reaffirming and very reassuring to hear somebody else say that as well.
Yeah. It's cool too, because I've seen there was an opportunity to hire someone that I wasn't ready for in my personal business just because of like season that I was in. But it was like one of those moments where I was like, oh, that's the total of the person you want to know. Like someone like you knew their family, you knew like their belief system. That just like, oh, they're going to be a hard worker. I know who this person is. Like, sure, that's such a perfect hire, And
Well, sometimes as a business owner, who takes the sacrifice? If it's a matter of if I get this, I need this here now because if I don't strike while it's available, I might not get the opportunity later.
yeah,
Who takes the sacrifice in that time, that position? Business owner does. You know what I mean? So that I can retain this person because look, opportunity doesn't wait for you to be ready for it.
yeah. I think as a business owner as well. And I think it's cool because you're helping your hourly employees not looking at hours.
Sure.
They're looking at months.
Yeah.
Or projects.
Yeah.
And us as business owners, we're looking at year.
Yes.
And so it's that whole idea of sometimes an employee, because of their value, you're paying for them to be around for that value, even if it's different, different seasons, like,
Yeah.
if I have a really good flooring guy that's not the best painter. I want him to be around because I need him as a flooring guy, and like, I'm sure you have something like that as well, maybe.
Yeah. So you're getting into kind of very specific areas of business and growth planning and strategy and stuff like that. Like, because there's a matrix to all this, right? And if you get somebody around that's good at what they do, great. The amount of sacrifice to take for that, like, you're going to have to take some sacrifice. Don't make it a complete sacrifice that you or your business bleed dry just waiting for an opportunity for this person to be able to execute on, because you're going to lose your business and them. But if you have somebody around, a temporary setback for the long-term gain is good, as long as it won't take you out. But then if you realize that, hey, I've got a really great flooring guy, he's willing to paint also, so like this works for now, then your next objective is, how do I get this guy doing what he's great at all of the time?
Yeah.
So what work do I have to do first to line him up to where we're both in our natural zone of desire, right? And in that, there's a time area. There's a time factor in that the planning has to come first, then the execution, then, like, it doesn't happen overnight. Some things happen faster than others, but that's what you would do is, don't settle with, I've got a great flooring guy, he's okay at painting, he loves flooring, he's willing to paint. Eventually, that's just going to reach a burnout.
Yeah.
Right. So you're always staying 1 to 2 to 3. You're always staying multiple steps ahead of your business and your employees, because you have a good temperature on it. You have a good vision on it. You have a good understanding of where it's at and what you need to go to steer the rudder on the ship. It might just be a little bit, but to keep it headed in the right direction.
Well, to broaden it out a little bit,
Yeah.
thinking about kind of starting business, and do you have, like, let's say someone's listening to this that wants to start their own business. I think your first piece of advice would be just do it, start it.
Yeah.
But like, what's some quick advice you could give someone in starting that process? What's the plan?
Yeah. It is not actually going to be around any sort of business, anything. It's going to be related to what's between your ears. Because you are your most valuable asset to your business. And it's going to take, if you don't pay attention to what I'm saying now, hopefully you'll remember what I'm saying. So 3 to 5 years from now, you'll be like, oh shit, Kyle was right. Or this is what he was talking about. But as a business owner, what you're going to experience quickly is very little of how your time is spent is doing what the business does, the commodity. A lot of your time will be spent running, growing, managing the business. And we don't understand that. In order to do that, I'll just stop there so I don't go too far. So that would be one thing. I'll give you 3 points. Understand the role of a business owner. Adjust your expectations to 0. And what I mean by that is, you're going to get to a point where you're like, I didn't expect it to be like this, or I didn't think it would be this way. Well, there's your problem. First off, as you thought. You had an anticipation or an expectation of something that you have had 0 experience of. So you're already setting yourself up for just confusion when you're wasting brain power and time trying to figure out how to adjust it to what you expected it was going to be, or how to fit your expectations inside what it is right now. Just have them be neutral. Have them be whatever they're going to be. Adjust your expectations to the moment. It is what it is. And then act accordingly. That would be number 2. Number 3, is if you're actually focusing and caring on your business, plan to be more successful than you are. Because there's a lot of people plan for scarcity instead of abundance. So what that does is it holds you back from an opportunity that you could capitalize on if your mind was geared towards abundance. Now, you have to be careful with that because it's business and we're talking about money, so there's debt involved. You have to be your own risk assessor too. So some people run a lot of risk. You can play it a little bit on the safer side, but remember that this is a very long game. Business should not be a get rich quick scheme. It's a long game. So understanding what type of risk that you might be taking on, just know what you're setting yourself up for. If it's taking on a job that might be big, taking on some debt, bringing on some employees, whatever it is, before you do it, envision yourself at the end goal. Can you put this together inside your mind before you execute it so you can see it happening? If you can do that, most likely you're okay to take the risk. If you're taking a risk and you don't even know how or where to start, you're in over your head. Now, there's a difference of, I know I can make it happen. I just got to figure out how, but I know that I can get to the end game. I have enough inside me that I have enough knowledge, experience, understanding that we can get from here to there. There's a couple things I might need to figure out, put the complete how together, but essentially you know that you can accomplish it. You can see the whole plan in place. That would be number 3.
What's the worst piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh boy. Man, I'd have to think about that one. Oh, that's a hard one. Jump to another one. Let me think about that.
What's the weirdest thing you've ever Googled?
The weirdest thing I've ever Googled. Yeah, that was got my mind on business stuff. Weirdest thing I've ever Googled. Man, I'm really striking out.
I was gonna say, I think for me it was like my wife got a 9-month-old, and so I think it was like breast milk related. I was like, is it bad? How long does breast milk go bad? It's just like, it's a weird thing to Google.
You know what? Okay, we'll jump back to the first one. The worst piece of business advice anybody ever gave me, it was more of a statement than advice, is when they said that, excuse me,
Tells.
it's when they said that employees are just employees. Basically referencing that employees are there for you, and no, that's backwards. You're there for them. And that's what a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I mean, I think as you own a business, you're going to have employees that come and go.
Yeah.
Maybe you do have some great people that are there for decades,
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, as we're both believers, and I think that's part of our core identity, that you like, that's where it stems from. But just any good business owner, like, you should pursue that. Hopefully they are better from working there, even if it was a short period of time.
Yeah.
And not every relationship can be great, but just like, how can I set this person up for, that was a good section. I learned things there,
Yeah. Our last core value is always evolve, meaning that if you're the same person a year from now, that when you walk through those doors, you and everybody around you is doing something wrong.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you have to grow skillfully. It means that you have to grow in some way, personally, professionally, skillfully, knowledge, something. We all have to grow together.
It reminds me kind of just like that idea we talked about before the podcast about seasons.
Yeah,
And there's seasons for everything, having a newborn for me and my wife, like that's not a season of rapid business growth.
sure.
It just doesn't happen. But there's also seasons of you don't have a newborn. Like, how is your business growing? And I think you start looking at that. I think that's I think that to look at your business as what season are you in is extremely valuable, and start looking at not only as people in general, if you're an hourly worker or a business owner or whatever, stop looking at your hourly, your task wise, not money wise.
Sure.
Start look to your day, look to your month. Business owners look to your year, but look at your 5 year, your 10 year. What do you want your business to be? I think so many people used to drive me crazy when I was in college. People would go for these degrees that I was like, well, what job are you going to get with that degree?
Yeah.
What's your plan? Your plan is, I'm getting this college degree, but what's your goal?
I don't know. I'll figure it out when I get there.
Yeah. And it's like,
Hey, that's great. Some things, but not everything.
I'm going to be very big with my kids of not, you should go to college. And I feel like I was pushed to go to college. Like, you got to go get your degree, because that's how it used to be. You want a good job, you need a college degree.
Yeah.
And now it's that college degree doesn't mean much if it's not in what people are looking for.
Sure.
I remember I had this one moment when I was in between jobs coming home from college. So I had a college degree, and I was like, I was going to be a dishwasher at Outback Steakhouse. So, I was 22. It's like, I just need an hourly job to kind of, as I'm like looking around for other stuff. And I went in for my first day of like training, and the guy was like, oh, well, you've got a college degree. Here, we'll move you over and you can start as a bloom chef. Which is Outback Steakhouse, making that bloomin' onion, baby.
Oh, yeah.
And they said, and the owner was like, well, I just wanted to give you a little bit more. This is like a next step. Like, you have a degree. And I just remember it was such a hilarious oxymoron.
Yeah.
That I'm like, oh, I was upgraded from the dish tank to deep frying a bloomin' onion because I had a college degree. Like, is this what all that money?
Excuse me, sir. I'm equally qualified for both positions.
Yes.
Doesn't really require any more to learn how to do one versus the other.
Yeah.
Apparently you find more value in that, but okay.
But it's funny because I think it was kind of out of that old mentality of like, you have more knowledge. But really, the joke is, it doesn't matter how many books I've read. The difference between dishwashing and deep frying bloomin' onions is it's a hand skill.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I'm going to be really big with my own kids is like, you don't have to go to college. I want you to have a plan. And if a degree is where it gets you, then that's great.
Yeah.
But don't just go to college to go to college.
Yeah.
And that drives me crazy is like, hey, you know how you should start off your life? Start off with a couple $100,000 down.
Right.
That's a great way to enter the workforce.
Right. And then go get paid peanuts.
Yeah. And I like peanuts. I've got nothing against peanuts, like honey roasted, wasabi,
cashews are my favorite.
Cashews, tree nuts,
Yeah. Well, okay. So, at this point in time, it's a pretty well-known fact that there are many, many wildly successful people that never even finished high school.
Yeah.
Right. They just got something in their mind and went for it. I think with the seasons is so it's especially relevant in a seasonal business because you see it every day. Well, we also have to be adaptive. So when you say seasons, you're assuming change, right? It could be change and then change back.
Yeah.
Or it could always be change forward, right? With us, it's both. We have our main season where we make money, where we make most of our money, and then we have our off season, which isn't really off. It's just a shift in focus, but we're not really producing the revenue that we would, if you will.
Yeah.
But each step is we grow and we move forward. So we're changing forward and we're also changing back into our rhythm. And I think that people use it as an excuse also. I've seen that a lot. Like, well, I'm just in a season. Well, you've been that same season for the last 3 years. At this point in time, you're not in a season. You're just in a problem.
Yeah.
And the problem is you. I hate to break it to you. So why don't you exchange your season for something else and stop making excuses that nobody's buying anymore? I'm just in a season. Get out of here. So changing, but yes, I 100% agree with you with seasons. All right. You're in a season of new parenthood, right? Times 2, right? And a season of, like, you're always going to be in a new season of business because we've never seen tomorrow yet. We've never seen next year. We've never seen, all this stuff. We're always in uncharted territory. And that's for everybody as a whole on the face of the earth. But, maybe it can be a very broad topic. But making adjustments for what the season looks like ahead is 100% accurate, right? You go into winter, you make sure that stuff doesn't freeze, it's going to break. You dress accordingly. You don't go out in bad weather. Like, you plan for these things. Same thing in business. And I think it's same thing in life, right? And when there's seasons, oftentimes the conversation goes to balance. Well, depending on who you talk to, there's also no such thing as work-life balance because you only have 100% of your time to spend. You can't spend less, you can't spend more. And you have to figure out how to put everything into that 100% of time. It's not a this or that. It's a this and that, and how much gets allotted to where, right? So it's an all-inclusive thing. Well, each season might mean you adjust how much time is allotted to different things. Monitoring the health of each thing as well. Like, you can't say, you can, but it's not good to say, well, my business is in a really big season right now of growth. I need to focus on that. And then continue saying that same thing when your family starts to suffer. And vice versa. Like, being a business owner, at some point in time, you're going to have the support of your family that understands you might have to work a little bit later. You might have to put in some extra time. You might have to do whatever is different because you own the role of being a business owner versus an employee that doesn't take all of those things. We might be in a little bit of a financial strain for a minute. The future might not be as clear, right? And so I think seasons is huge to really identify exactly what it means, but understand that it's also ever changing as well. It can come in macro cycles, it can come in micro cycles. And that kind of goes back to my point earlier of remove your expectation, right? Because when you remove your expectation, you can adapt a lot faster to whatever it is in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that too, because I think identifying what season you're in is so important because stuff gets thrown at us that we can't control.
Sure.
But if you're in a season where you can push, it's like, hey, like your home life is good. This is a time when I can push more and put more time into the business. Identifying that and doing that is great because then you get thrown stuff of new baby or family sickness or flow season, and it's like when those come, it's too late to react.
Right.
And so prepping for knowing what season you're in. And I think I needed to hear that when we had our son, because I'm like, I can't put time into the business, but be identifying that and be like, this is not time for business growth. This is the time to put my family first,
sure,
and be home more than I would like with building my business.
Sure.
But it's more, for me, that was my priority, is my family.
Sure.
I think that's what your priority should be.
Yeah.
But then also identifying those times of like, okay, now we're in a different spot. This is a time. And it's more of not like giving less time to my family.
No.
I'm talking more about like not being lazy in my business and being like, this is an opportunity to push your business hard, as opposed to just maintaining like, oh, I've got this job and I'm doing this is like, what season are you in? Identifying that and, planning so you don't have to, act rather than react.
Some people mistake more for more, right? Like growth for more. Well, if I'm going to grow my business, that means I have to do more. Well, most of it is just you might just have to do different. Like, can I do something different to get more results? Yeah. Again, it starts in between your ears. Can I do this? Can I produce the same thing income wise by doing something different and still have the same amount of time? What would that look like? It goes back to the planning, right? Well, okay, that means that we need to produce this much revenue. That means we need to, answer this many phone calls and bid this many jobs and put in this many man hours and all this stuff. Well, we need a head to do that. We need a face. We need a person. Well, does that person have to be me? We need it to happen, and I don't have time for, what can we do here? Well, that's thinking different.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't mean that you always have to go back and do more and work yourself to the bone. Sometimes it means different. And you said something that I really liked, and it's slipped my mind what it was now, but it'll come back to
Wasn't that profound?
Oh, no, it was. It was that, like, luckily, in order to do that and focus on your family, back to what you said earlier, is you built a business that you were able to do that with.
Yeah.
Like, we have to have, as a responsible male, it is our God-given responsibility to have a temperature to take care of the people around us, our family, our employees, our surrounding. Like, that is our duty as a man, right? And so what you're saying that you didn't say is that I needed to focus on my family more at that point in time. What wasn't said is I had already done enough ahead of time to support my family in this moment that I didn't need to sacrifice time with my family to put it into my business. So I was already doing something for my family that I didn't realize I was doing because I could afford to do this.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to move into a different season, figure out what I want that to look like and how it's going to look like at a point to where I might have to put more time into it again because I'm looking out for my family and all of these things. It's time to get back on the horse. Like you said, not being lazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Identifying those times and correct. I think I had set it up well that I could work less.
Yeah.
It was, for me, it was more putting less hours into the business on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Because of prioritizing my family, I just wasn't able to. But yeah, it was set up so I could do that. And it wasn't intentional though. And so now I'm like, how do I intentionally prepare for something like that? Because everyone always has something, and
that comes into, again, probably a topic for another episode or podcast, but just building a team and building leaders.
Yeah. Work yourself out of a job, I think, is always great advice. Train people up so that they're equipped to do it,
Exactly. Or hire.
Yeah.
You can have all the degrees in the world if you hire them.
That's true. And then you just need to have a good hoodie because AC can get a little chilly sometimes. Make sure you have enough water in your car and so yeah, Kyle, we've been friends for a long time. I think we met in like grade school, somewhere in there.
Which would have been, in church because I was homeschooled.
Right, yeah. We were school-age friends in church. What's your favorite memory? Oh, and I'm going to cut 2 stories out. You can't talk about it if you said it at my wedding.
Okay. There's so many, it's so hard to pick. So I guess I'm just gonna pick the first one that came to mind.
Do it.
Ernie burning.
Why don't you say what happened?
Well, we
As stated, homeschoolers, and you invent your own fun sometimes, and you get creative.
this is hopefully nobody, thinks we're bad kids for doing this or weird. I mean,
A little degenerate.
sure, yeah, a little degenerate. But anyways, we had this this Ernie doll, right? Stuffed, Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street, this Ernie doll. I think it was something you had laying around. And we're kids, right? We're boys. We like destructive things. We like pyrotechnics. We like weapons. We like all the stuff. And so, long story short, this was just when like cell phones and you could record stuff and post it. Well, we weren't posting stuff at the time. We were just recording it for our own entertainment, really, because we'd come back and watch the stuff.
I was gonna say this was actually on a camcorder.
Yeah, this was a camcorder
On tape. This was even before like digital.
So, we had this makeshift flaming bow and arrow.
Yeah.
And we soaked Ernie in fuel.
Yeah.
And set Ernie up on the dirt bank at your house.
Mm-hmm.
And we recorded it and we called it the Ernie burning. And I'm sure you put together. We had this flaming arrow that we shot at Ernie. Ernie went up in flames and we had some voiced over
Commentary
of what we thought Ernie would sound like at this moment.
We will now repeat those for you here. Just kidding. I won't do that.
Yeah. So that's definitely one of my favorites.
That's great. Yeah, it's cool to see, like, we've been friends for a long time, and it's fun to see both of us going into podcasting. And we'll do a little shout out for your stuff at the end, but it's been cool talking to you as a business owner.
Yeah.
I just love to ask people random questions. So, Kyle Ascione, do you believe in aliens?
Nah.
You don't believe them?
Nah.
You think we're the only sentient being in the galaxy?
I think that there are things that we can't explain. I think that aliens is a pretty far stretch, and it tries to explain things that we don't know enough about. And I think that there's a lot of stuff that exists that we don't know about, like I said. I think that there's a spiritual realm that is a big part of this. And I think that people make things up to make themselves feel better about what they can explain. I do not think that aliens are one of them. Or that they're a real thing.
So anything that is described as an alien or even like a UFO.
Well, okay, think about it. Like so I'm going to use two examples, the military and Disney. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The military has technology that exists 30 to 40 years before we even know about it as civilians. Disney uses technology. In technology itself, the new tech that we see as consumers is developed 10 years before we ever see it. It takes roughly that amount of time to get it into a price point that's easy to swallow by consumers. And as technology advances, that time lapse speeds, shortens. But there's enough stuff in the world that we're not told, or we're led to believe something different. I mean, if we have drones that exist and we're still talking about UFOs, what's to say a drone can't be the size of a car? You know what I mean? Like, we're putting so much constraint. We're trying to fit what we can't explain into a box that we can. And it doesn't work that way. And so we would be open to a lot more possibilities and a lot more realities if we were to look at the world around us and be like, well, I don't know that I can exactly explain it, but I don't know that I can't either.
So you can't not explain it.
Correct.
All right, let's just end with this and keep it short. For the love of God.
Sure.
That's just it. I know we're both talkers.
Yeah.
I joke about that a lot, but just like sometimes I'll come home and I'll be like, and my wife's like, can I say something now?
Okay, so go on Amazon, get these little timers. They're about the size of a small donut, right?
I'm into donuts.
Well, you spin the outside and it comes with a timer, and then you just click the top.
Yeah.
And the timer starts going. I've actually started using that for myself, for tasks, for talking, for meetings, for everything, because I know I'm guilty of it.
So you're like, okay, when that bell goes off, I'm done talking.
Yeah.
All right. So in a deep question answered quickly, what's your personal theory about the meaning of life?
I think that we were designed to accomplish and experience things that are greater than our ability and capability and perception of those two things. And the meaning of life is to explore that, to see how much more we can accomplish, things that are greater than our, with things that are greater than ourselves. Now, I'm going to come from a biblical perspective on that, but essentially, our meaning of life is to experience things that are greater than ourselves.
I like that. I like that a lot. I'm looking up a Tolkien quote, and I feel like it really kind of exemplifies what you said. Is at the end of The Hobbit, Gandalf is talking to Bilbo, and he says, "You are a very fine person, Mr. Baggins, and I am very fond of you, but you are only quite a little fellow in a wide world, after all."
Mm-hmm.
And Bilbo said, "Thank goodness for that." And I just love that idea. It's like, I think sometimes it feels scary that there's so much out there, there's so much unknown, and there's so much, what step do I take? But there's also great joy.
Yeah.
And the world is big. And I think the more you learn, the bigger it gets. And I that's my view of God as well. The deeper, further in, further up, Well, thanks for being on, man. This is fun. This is the first episode of In Bad Company with Heath Fall. Why don't you talk a little bit where people can find you, your own podcast, everything like that?
Yeah, so Kyle Ascione, K Ascione, Ascione, K Ascione is my Instagram handle, or Kyle Ascione on Facebook. YouTube is not up yet, probably will not be up by the time this airs. The podcast, there is a podcast. It's in works of starting season 4, I believe. Not a ton of episodes, but season 4, we're doing some preparations for that with some audio visual stuff. It will be on YouTube. That's called 7-Day Hustle. You'll see a picture of my mug on the face of it, but that is everywhere, all the major podcasting platforms, and that does exist currently. So 7-Day Hustle, it is really geared towards personal growth, mentality, things like that. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on, man. Thanks for listening to this podcast.
Enjoy. See ya.